Good evening from London, and good evening from the SONGUN007 channel, and myself, Dr. Dermot Hudson, the chairman of the British Group for the Study of the Juche idea and chairman of the Korean Friendship Association of the UK. And this is our 23rd live stream. Yes, the 23rd live stream, and I hope everybody can hear me loud and clear. If not, please shout in the comments or the chat, I should say. So it's great to see everyone. And first of all, before I get into my two topics for tonight, the Merseyside Marxist Book Fair last weekend was absolutely great. It was held up in Liverpool, Merseyside, a city that's very famous for Labour movement struggles, the Liverpool Dockers. Also, the only place in the world where Trotskyites actually came to power. Yes, the Trotskyites took control of Liverpool City Council in the 1980s and bankrupted it in an attempt to not build socialism in one country, but to build socialism in one English city. Anyway, to get back to the points, the book fair was a great success. I sold all copies that I had of my new book, Anti-Revisionist Fortress of Juche. They all went, and in fact, I sold quite a lot of books, both my own books and also some works of President Kim Il-sung and Chairman Kim Jong-il and respected Marshal Kim Jong-un. And I was able to address a gathering of about 22 people in the basement. So it was a great success. We should be doing this kind of thing more often. So in the summer, I'm sure we will have more activities that will reach out and engage with people. To proceed, and I've got two topics lined up for tonight. I'm going to speak for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then, as usual, people will bang away with a few questions and comments, and we will aim to finish by about 2000 hours British summertime, or maybe continue a little bit after then. So, as to the two topics, which are very diverse and very different, the first topic is the anniversary of the Kwangju massacre, which I think will be a subject that many people will not know about, because there's a total blackout in the mainstream media about human rights abuses in fascist South Korea. It's something that you won't hear about. Now, the mainstream media like to tell us every day, in fact, sometimes every minute and every hour, about so-called human rights abuses in people's career, and they prayed treacherous scum to denounce their socialist motherland. Yet the mainstream media is silent, totally silent, about the Kwangju massacre, which happened 45 years ago in South Korea. Few people will actually know that in May 1980, 5,000, yes, 5,000 people died at the hands of South Korean puppet armed forces and US forces. This happened in South Korea the wonderful human rights paradise that is so beloved of liberals who take money from South Korea. And this atrocity didn't happen in People's Korea. In fact, it would be totally impossible in People's Korea, a society that is based on single-hearted unity, where the people and the party and the people and the army are one. So, first of all, let's give a little bit of historical background about South Korea and why the citizens of Kwangju in South Korea rose up in May 1980 only to be massacred in cold blood by the South Korean puppet fascists. In 1945, the US imperialists occupied South Korea 3 weeks after Korea's liberation. Korea had actually been liberated on August 15th, 1945, by the Korean People's Revolutionary Army, led by President Kim Il-sung, and also some Soviet troops. And of course, it will be the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation in less than 3 months from now. The US imperialists had landed in South Korea. They established direct military rule under a US general, General Hodge, I believe, or General Hodges, not to be confused with the air raid warden in Dad's army. The US imperialists dissolved the People's Committee, instruments of popular power in South Korea, and they banned the Communist Party. In 1948, the US imperialists set up a puppet regime headed by the corrupt Syngman Rhee. This was a character who'd stolen the funds from the Korean nationalist movement and had lived in exile. He was later to be overthrown by the April Popular Uprising in 1960. In May 1961, Park Chung-hee, a former collaborator with the Japanese colonialists, seized power through a military coup d'etat. At least 100,000 people died. Again, the mainstream media will not tell you facts like this. They will hide these facts. They totally whitewash South Korea. The military fascist regime of Park Chung-hee became a prototype for the neo-colonies of imperialism, and later military fascist regimes came to power in Brazil in 1964 and in Chile in 1973, just to name a few. In October 1972, Park Chung-hee, though he was actually in power, imposed martial law again and the harsh Juche constitution. However, Park became an embarrassment to the US as South Korea began to face economic crisis and rising debts, and also resistance emerged in the form of strikes and massive student protests. The US had been defeated in the Vietnam War, and some pro-American countries in Asia started to distance themselves from the US, thereby actually isolating South Korea as it was an old-style puppet regime, basically an anachronism. Elsewhere, there was the Iranian Revolution, just to name one of many successful anti-imperialist movements that swept the world in the mid-70s and the late 70s. So the US decided to get rid of Park Chung-hee. On the 27th of October 1979, He was assassinated by his own security chief, Korean Central Intelligence Agency Director Kim Jae-gu. This incident has been humorously portrayed in the South Korean dark comedy The President's Last Bang, and also in the DPRK multi-part film The Nation and Destiny. This incident is also depicted. The assassin declared, and I quote, "The United States is at my back." On the 12th of December 1979, Chun Doo-han seized power in a military coup. Chun had been trained at the West Point Military Academy in the US, and he had also been a commander of South Korean armed forces that had been sent to Vietnam to fight on the US side. And he'd carried out atrocities against the Vietnamese people. Fast forward to May 17th, 1980. Chun declared martial law and arrested opposition figures, not to mention student activists. On the 18th of May, citizens of Kwangju City, South Cholla Province, rose up against martial law. The Kwangju uprising was a brave and heroic manifestation of the anti-fascist, anti-imperialist struggle of the South Korean popular masses and anti-imperialist fighters. The Kwangju uprising, which lasted 9 days, added a new chapter to the history of the struggle of the South Korean people for independence and democracy. The participants in the Kwangju uprising showed remarkable courage and determination in the face of intense fascist repression by the South Korean puppet reactionaries and the Yankee imperialists. The South Korean puppet regime responded with the utmost ferocity. They sent in power troops, helicopters, and tanks. With the permission of the US, note South Korea did not have and does not have operational command only over its own forces. The frontline troops from the 20th Division of the South Korean puppet army were moved away from the front line with the DPRK to Kwangju City. This shows the falsity of the so-called threat from the DPRK and communist invasion. So instead of actually fighting the DPRK, the South Korean puppet army actually fought the South Korean people. The US also sent the warship USS Coral Sea to South Korea to be on standby to assist the South Korean armed forces in the suppression of the Kwangju uprising. It is said that, in fact, the US itself directly participated in the massacre, that US helicopter gunships actually were mowing people down. The South Korean puppet troops committed all sorts of atrocities, such as bayoneting pregnant women. There are reports that the South Korean puppet troops were high on drugs and alcohol. Tanks, flamethrowers, and helicopters were used against the Kwangju citizens. A total of 5,000 people were killed and 14,000 were injured. No one has ever been brought to account for the massacre, and Chun Doo-han himself later insulted and slandered those who had died. Really, since the end of the 1980s, a massive propaganda campaign to whitewash and prettify the image of the South Korean fascist puppet regime has been carried out. KFA UK has even been told off by some people for using the term puppet in relation to South Korea. The 1988 Seoul Olympics were a key turning point. It does seem strange that the Olympics were meant to symbolize peace and friendship were held in a land where only 8 years before 5,000 people had been killed horribly. The DPRK boycotted the Olympics, and this was supported by Cuba, by socialist Albania, Ethiopia, Nicaragua, Madagascar, and the Seychelles. Shamefully, the so-called socialist allies of the DPRK, such as the then USSR and China, sent teams to participate. Later, worst treachery were followed when the Hungarian revisionists recognized the South Korean puppet regime, followed by others such as the Soviet, Polish, and Yugoslav revisionists. It was later revealed that Gorbachev had received a bribe of $100,000 from the South Korean puppet regime, and that the Hungarian revisionists had also been bribed, but no one ever talks about this. In many countries, there was a very concerted effort to hide the true nature of the South Korean puppet regime and present it to the world as some kind of utopia of freedom and human rights with as supposed prosperities. Liberals fell over each other to praise the South Korean puppets, as did some on the left, mentioning no names. It was whispered to me once that, in fact, in the early 90s, some Labour MPs and trade union officials from the UK were actually bribed by the South Korean puppet regime, received Rolexes and cars. And also quite a few British academics are on the payroll, but we won't name them. For me, South Korea was and is a miserable colony of US imperialism, the place where the Kwangju massacre took place. So now on to the other subject, which I think people will find very interesting, and I've done a bit of research on it. Socialist housing in People's Korea versus capitalist housing in the UK. And as we all know, People's Korea has free housing. It's an incredible achievement. And I'm sure that everybody's seen the pictures on different social media and on YouTube of people in People's Korea moving into new housing in the new housing developments in the Hwasong district in Jeonwi Street, and there's more and more houses under construction. I think it's a very impressive achievement of People's Korea that they have free housing. Now, I remember back in February 2019, when I'd visited the DPRK for the Day of the Shining Star, and I had two guides from the Cultural Relations Committee, and one of them was a young woman who'd been married, I think, for 2 or 3 years, and she had a 1-year-old child. Now, she told me how her and her husband just applied to have a flat, and within a year they were given a flat just like that. Simple as that. But it's quite different in the capitalist countries, you know, I'm going to give a bit of detail about the UK, but if she'd been living in the UK, her and her husband would have had the option of trying to get a mortgage and then spend 25 years struggling to pay it back, trying to apply for a council flat and probably wait goodness knows how long for it, or privately rent and be ripped off by greedy landlords. So, I mean, let's just look at a few statistics. And I've been researching the statistics for rent in London. As I say, in people's career, housing is free. Let's look at a couple places in London. Kensington and Chelsea, a studio flat is £1,427 per month. A one-bedroom flat is £2,062 per month, or £24,000 per year. Islington, where Tony Blair used to have a house and where Jeremy Corbyn lives, you can rent a studio flat for £1,383 per month, or one-bedroom flats for £1,565. Tower Hamlets, a studio flat is £1,398 per month. One-bedroom flats, £1,547 per month. Westminster, which is right in the central London, in fact, what most people think is London, studio flat is £1,371 per month, a one-bedroom flat, £2,113 per month. Lambeth, studio flat is £1,240 per month, and a one-bedroom flat is £1,595 per month. In one London suburb that I know, the rent for a two-bedroom flat is £1,750 per month, which is actually more than a lot of people earn. To buy a one-bedroom flat in central London would cost literally millions. According to the Rightmove website, a modest one-bed flat in Marylebone would cost £1.5 million. And then you have the scandal of leasehold, or fleasehold as it's called, where you own a flat but you don't really. Leasehold is a very archaic British system. In fact, some say it's really a throwback to feudalism, where you actually just simply buy the right to occupy a flat for a given period of time. And there are huge service charges, even though you supposedly own the flat, and also ground rent. And if you want to extend the lease, then you have to pay a lot of money. You know, it's a total rip-off. It's one of the biggest con tricks. Supposedly, the British government are going to end it one day, but it doesn't seem to be happening. And recently, the Labour housing minister said he would not cap service charges. Anyway, what about the UK's famous social housing or council housing? Because I know there will be people who say, oh, but if people can't afford to buy a flat or rent a flat, oh, they can get a council flat. Yeah. Well, Let's look at council housing, and I've actually been a council tenant twice myself, so I've had a lot of experience of it. Well, first of all, so-called social housing in the UK is not socialist housing. It's very bureaucratic to get on to the council housing list. You have to provide lots of documents, passport, proof of income, proof of residence, all kinds of nonsense. It's just total bureaucracy. And the waiting lists are huge. For example, one borough I could name, it said there was 10,000 people on the waiting list. That is incredible. And the wait for a 2-bedroomed property, and this the wait for a 5-bedroom property can be 154 years. I'm not making it up. This was on the website of a local authority in the UK. And as I say, social housing, so-called, under capitalism is not socialist housing. It's no way comparable to people's career. It's not free. In 2023, the rent for a 2-bedroomed council flat in one London borough was £102 per week, excluding charges for services, or about £5,200 a year. So that is the grim reality of life under capitalism, which offers no solution to people. So, I mean, we salute the vast achievements of people's careers, such as free housing, free healthcare, and free education, and abolition of taxation, low-cost public transport, and low-cost food. The achievements of people's career are very great, and we must do more to defend them and get out and tell people the truth about people's career. And KFA UK have got a number of events coming up over the following weekends. We've got the reading session on the book Understanding Career, volume 9, Human Rights, and we've also going to be showing the film An Unattached Unit. Anyway, I will stop there and take a few questions. Just scroll up the chat. Hope I haven't missed anyone, because sometimes you can. All right. Yeah, I had my filling in a DPRK in April 2002. Well, I don't know this story about blue jeans being censored on DPRK television. It sounds like another of these stories that's been made up by the mainstream media. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of countries, jeans can be viewed as a symbol of US imperialism. Korean people have nice clothes. They have clothes made from vinylon. Why do they need to dress like Yankees and wear horrible American clothes? Defender of the DPRK. I wouldn't be surprised if there were plans to blame the DPRK for Kwangju Yes, in fact, the South Korean puppets at one point in time did try to blame it on the DPRK, or say that the uprising had actually been provoked by DPRK operatives working in South Korea. Spruce Cobra, good afternoon from the Shropshire branch. Good evening from the Shropshire branch. Well, good evening to you. We should have your posters soon, hopefully next week. If I'm not mistaken, it costs 25 millions just to live in a comfortable home in the US. Well, I can believe that. I mean, I think in London, even in the suburbs, to buy a house, you need about £500,000 at least. The US has a really bad homeless situation. I mean, I've seen videos where you see just whole areas that are just full of homeless. It's really terrible. I mean, we've got homeless people in London, and we've got people living in tents on the street. And I'm going to be in central London tomorrow, and I'm sure I will see some. But the US is 10 times worse. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a reasonable question from username, who's beginning to get himself a reputation as a troll. Yeah, I've seen lots of these reports. More than one person has sent them. And I've studied the reports very carefully. What is factual and what is confirmed is that Burkina Faso, under the new government, which is making lots of changes, I think it's a very good thing, has restored diplomatic relations with the DPRK about 2 years ago, and is going to develop deep going cooperation with the DPRK. And it's also looking at military cooperation with the DPRK. Now, what I saw in one video, it said that, as our friend is quoting in the chat, that 700 DPRK commandos or troops have been dispatched to Burkina Faso, which, by the way, means land of upright men. And this had been confirmed at least by the government in Burkina Faso. So I looked carefully. I kept looking, and I couldn't find anywhere where the government in Burkina Faso had made an announcement about the arrival of DPRK troops in Burkina Faso. I suspect, at best, as to use an English phrase, people who've made these reports have jumped the gun. Maybe DPRK troops will be dispatched to Burkina Faso. I wouldn't rule it out. And in fact, I think if it happened, I think it would be a very good thing. They would be there to support the progressive anti-imperialist government in Burkina Faso and help to strengthen the relations between the two countries. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but it may not have actually happened at this stage in time. It's probably something that's going to happen, but let's wait and see. I mean, I think it's worth talking a little bit about Burkina Faso, which means land of upright men. Used to be called the Upper Volta for a long time. The DPRK always had good relations with the country, even when it was Upper Volta. And of course, when Captain Thomas Sankara came to power, he established very close relations with the DPRK, and in fact visited the DPRK. I'm trying to find pictures of him with President Kim Il-sung, and maybe a video of him with President Kim Il-sung. So the relations were very close, and the DPRK assisted with building reservoirs for irrigation in the country. So I think Burkina Faso is moving in the right direction, and I think relations between Burkina Faso and People's Korea will strengthen and develop and move to a new higher level. With regard to the question about collision in Korea, which I believe featured Muhammad Ali and Ric Flair, I saw a bit of that, not much, about 5 minutes of it. Yes, it is an extremely interesting country. In fact, I'm probably going to read up a bit more on it tonight after the live stream. Yes, I'm sure the people are very hardworking. I've seen some quite good videos on Twitter about the country, showing some new housing being built. I'll just have a quick drink of water while I wait for some more questions. Well, I'm glad there's people here on this chat who know a lot about Burkina Faso. And say it is a very interesting country, as indeed Benin is, because that was the People's Republic of Benin from the 1970s to the 1990s. Right, the Korean video course on the Juche idea at your channel has 23 parts, but it seems at least 20 or 30 parts. Do you have the missing videos? Well, I can check. Those were videos from the Korean Association of Social Scientists. I mean, I'd have to refer back to see, to see how many we've got. I mean, basically everything got that we had got uploaded. And of course, the Korean Association of Social Scientists have changed the website. So I don't know if those videos are still there, but we can check again. Maybe a couple of videos have gone astray and not been included in the playlist. Have to double check that very carefully. Yes, I think that is very interesting. What's been written about Sankara, Captain Thomas Sankara, that he reduced tribalism and created national unity. Okay, just wait for a few more questions. Perhaps people would like to suggest topics for me to write books on, or in fact topics that we could hold meetings on. That might be an idea. Yeah, like you say, it's possible that one or two videos just didn't get included on the playlist. So I'm going to have to double check. But it is a fact that they changed the website, so they're not available. Right. Okay. Seems to be not too many questions tonight. Yes, Burkina is Faso uh, is a country that has a very complex history and very interesting one. And yeah, I mean, I've seen if I pronounced that right, Compore. Yeah, he had a very his reputation was not so good. Without out a doubt, Captain Thomas Sankara was the leader. He was a great, great leader of his country. We could also speak about a number of African countries which changed direction. I mean, one of the obvious ones was Ghana in the 1960s when Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown by an imperialist backed coup. and also there was like an abrupt change of leadership in the People's Republic of Congo, Congo Brazzaville. What is the best book published in the DPRK exposing the South Korean puppet regime? I think the 1993 book, Human Rights Situation in South Korea, is very good. And I think also Eruption of Wrath Against Torture, Ridden Rule is a very good book as well. And the series Letters from South Korea by TK, which is basically reprints from the South Korean and Japanese press, did a lot to expose South Korea. But as I said in the presentation, the big problem is there's been a massive whitewashing exercise of South Korea, and a lot of liberals have taken money from South Korea, and you've got outfits like NK News who are in the pay of the South Korean puppet regime and spread a lot of misinformation. What I admire about the DPRK publishing house is that there is bourgeois authors or books published by people who, that there is bourgeois authors or books published by people who don't really have lives. Have you seen the parade in Moscow? Only a few bits of it. I haven't watched it in full yet. Been very busy. Say I was up in Liverpool last weekend, so I'm just sort of catching up with everything. Defender of the DPRK, wealthy writers who never have to worry about working a real job, like in the West. Well, username, you're showing your true face as a troll and provocateur, and DPRK is not one of the most hated countries in the world. It's mainstream media propaganda and falsification that twist people's minds. And most hated country in the world, I would say, is probably Israel. I don't care about people's reactions. Good evening, Gregor. And also hello to David from Italy, I believe. There are at least two persons here named username. I see. Well, that's unhelpful. Unhelpful. People should call themselves by their actual by the names they've got on YouTube or something. It can create a bit of confusion. But yeah, I hope to watch the victory parade. I think over the weekend, but I like I say, was quite busy. It took quite a long time to get up to Liverpool and to get get back from Liverpool, so it took a lot of time. It was very good to be in Liverpool. It's a very working class city, very rich in history, with things like the Liverpool Dockers, and it's a very friendly place. And the reception we got was very good. Lots of people came to visit the KFA stall. Like you said at the beginning, I sold out of all the copies I had of my book, Anti-Revisionist Fortress of Juche, and also sold a copy of one of my favourite books, The Great Conspiracy Against People's Career, and also a copy of Career of Juche. We had lots of discussions. The speech I made was very, very good, was well received. There's a video of that available. And a couple of interesting sound bites came up. Our KFA UK representative in Liverpool said anti-DPRK propaganda is a tsunami of shit. And someone else sort of came up to the stall and said, really, the propaganda against the DPRK is like the propaganda against the old Soviet Union. In fact, personally, I actually think it's a lot worse. But he made the point that, and I'm old enough to remember the Soviet Union, that the press in Britain never said anything good about the Soviet Union, or if they did, it was very rare. And with the DPRK, the propaganda is about 100 times, 1,000 times worse. And I think it's very toxic and pernicious, because whereas with the former USSR, it was mostly about anti-communism, with the DPRK, there's two twin aspects to propaganda against the DPRK. One is anti-communism, and the other is simple anti-Korean racism. It's simply Orientalism. Anti-DPRK feeling is actually racism for liberals. It's the form of racism that is very acceptable to liberals, and that they can actually get away with, because they can't say anything about black or Asian people or other nationalities, but continually bashing the DPRK and saying silly things is it's a kind of racism, and one that they can indulge themselves with. And I always say, scratch a liberal hard enough and you'll find a fascist underneath. And also scratch a liberal hard enough and you'll find an imperialist and a racist underneath. Well, thank you for your comments. I might have different views, but I admire your dedication to remaining loyal and honest to your opinions. Thank you for that. Defender of the DPRK. I was getting a bit confused by your comments, and now no bourgeois authors in the DPRK. That's absolutely correct. There's no bourgeois authors in the DPRK. I mean, in the West, writing is not actually a well-paid job. Many writers struggle to make any income from writing, but a handful of writers who turn out trash like Barbara Cartman's in the past, and a load of others. All sorts of names that I could quote, but they just write rubbish. And as has been remarked, it's very far from the real lives of the ordinary people. Whereas in people's career, anyone can become a writer. There are literary and art circles at factories and farms where you can submit writing and enter competitions. And if you're good enough, you can become a professional writer. In the DPRK, there is a writers' union, which all writers belong to. And they have writers' union holiday camps and so on. It's very good, and writer in the DPRK is guaranteed an income, and writers in people's career are encouraged to be at one with the people. President Kim Il-sung said in the 1960s that writers must go very deep among the people and live with them and learn from them. He warned against them becoming aristocrats. I think someone's having trouble putting their comments in the chat. In my view, the issue is when politicians, and it seems to have cut off. I know the chat can be a bit funny at times, and there's time lag. But anyway, I'll wait to see the rest of what you put. In my view, the issue is when political differences turn into dehumanization. Well, yeah, well, I think that that can happen. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I'll sort of stay around for about a few more minutes, just in case there's a few last-minute questions or people are having trouble typing stuff. Yeah, I know some people need to might want to hide their real names. I'm not suggesting people go on. Sorry, it was slip of tongue, but people go on under their real names. But if there's two people using the title username, it then becomes a bit confusing. So I think people can adopt aliases on social media, which quite a lot of people do. Yeah, I know in the so-called democratic West, there can be high costs for dissenting opinions, loss of employment, even people being arrested. That's happened with some pro-Palestinian protesters, happened to the famous independent journalist Kit Clarenberg. So yeah, I mean, I understand if people don't want to put their real name. Perhaps people should be more inventive and not just put username. That's yes. I'm presently reading Young Man's Escape from South Korea. Now that is an absolutely brilliant book. That is one of the best ever DPRK books. Fantastic book. You know, perhaps I should reread that as well over the weekend. I don't know if there's a copy online on something like archive.org. It's a really fantastic book, and it's a very moving story. It's from the 1980s, and it's actually a story about someone who defects from South Korea to the DPRK. It's based on a true story, and it's got a very graphic and vivid description of what South Korea is like. I remember the part where his sister is forced to become a servant for a rich family, and how the decadent life they have, and that she was actually a servant for the dog of the rich people. You know, I think sometimes we lose sight of the decadence of lives of the bourgeoisie. You know, in fact, yeah, they do have servants for animals. You know, I remember my wife used to once work for a rich woman, and she got sent out to buy a blanket for £150 for the dog. You know, so absurd. But yeah, I mean, the back to the book, Young Man's Escape from South Korea. That's such a powerful book. And yeah, I remember what else he said about the rich people changing their clothes several times a day. And he also depicts how part of Seoul is like an American city. You know, it's totally Americanized, and another part of Seoul is like a colony of Japan. It's such a vivid story, but I don't know if this would be a spoiler, but I think it's also quite dramatic how the writer is forced to join the South Korean puppet army, and of course he's stationed by the demarcation line, and he shoots a couple of Americans and escapes to the DPRK. It's a great book. If, as say, if there's copies online, I think everybody should read that. And I think Latin American has sort of raised the issue of different DPRK books. And one of my two favourites is the Baek Bong biography of President Kim Il-sung, and also the 1972 short biography of President Kim Il-sung. Absolutely brilliant books, and you can buy secondhand copies of them online as well. And I'll just mention about DPRK books. I was able to download from Nainara the book, a new book that's out this year called Great Man, about President Kim Il-sung, which is a wonderful book. And I've started reading it online, and I hope to be able to one day get the hard copy. So, I mean, are there any other questions? Yeah, I mean, that's an idea. I mean, maybe we could republish, or perhaps a bit less ambitious, but I think a more doable would be perhaps to scan some of the books in and make them available on archive.org. I think that would be a great idea to do. And I say, it is doable. Yeah, just to reply to something in the chat. Yeah, I agree that the propaganda against the DPRK actually does dehumanize its people. That is very much part of it, and there's an awful lot of very silly stuff on social media now. You know, that I think is very insulting and dehumanizing towards Korean people. You know, people creating AI copies of what they think the DPRK is like. So anyway, I mean, it's been a good live stream. Thank everybody for their support. I would remind people we got online events on the 24th and the 31st. We got the reading session on the 24th, film night on the 31st. Both of these events are going to be on Telegram. Skype has gone, and when no one wanted to use Teams or whatever it's called, everybody wanted to use Telegram, or at least that was the most popular choice, because we had a poll, and Telegram came out on top. So these events will be on Telegram. As for future stuff and stuff going on, let's try to aim to do a picket in London in June to meet the month of to mark the month of solidarity, and this keynote anniversaries of the DPRK in August and October, and there will be online events to mark those two very auspicious occasions. Oh, thank you, George. Solidarity from KFA Greece. Yes, and solidarity to KFA Greece from KFA UK. America only want people to think they are free and despise the DPRK simply because they are not fascist. Yes. Yes, that is true. Okay, well, I think we've covered a lot of questions. I'm going to be back in a few weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I'm going to be busy with different stuff over the next few months, not just DPRK anniversaries, but a couple of other things I need to do. But I hope to be able to continue with the live stream. It might be a bit less frequent, but I hope to keep it keep it up. And again, thank you for all of you for your support. Goodbye and have a good evening.